A quick check on the COVID data. Active COVID-19 cases in India now up for the second day on a trot, increasing by over 7,500 in the last 24 hours. With this, India's coronavirus tally has crossed 93.5 lakh. Around 1.35 lakh people have succumbed to the virus so far. Let's talk about testing now. Around 10.9 lakh samples tested in the last 24 hours, compared with 11.59 lakh samples the previous day. The mortality rate continues to hover around the 1.46% mark for the fifth consecutive day. Remember, Prime Minister Modi has asked states to try and bring down the COVID fatality rate to 1%. Now, Oxford University and AstraZeneca have acknowledged a manufacturing error after experts raised questions about preliminary results of their COVID-19 vaccine candidate. Oxford University has said that some of the vials used in the trial did not have the right concentration of vaccine, so some volunteers got half a dose. However, it added that the problem has since been corrected. Juliana Teitelbaum joins us now with more. Juliana, take us through the concerns raised by experts.
Let me outline for you what's happening. AstraZeneca is facing criticism for the way it handled the public disclosure around the release of these phase 3 interim trial results on Monday. And there's mounting concerns that the results may not be as strong as they initially seemed. As a reminder for viewers, the results showed 70% efficacy on average for this vaccine, but 90% efficacy for a minority of participants who received an initial half dose followed by a full dose, and just 62% efficacy for the majority of participants who received 2 full doses. Now, there are 4 sort of buckets of concerns, I would say. The first is that the company was not forthcoming about the reason for the 2 different dosing regimens. Then the head of AstraZeneca's non-oncology R&D unit told Reuters that the smaller dosing regimen was unintentional. It was the result of a miscalculation, an error that he called serendipitous. It was an act of serendipity. Regulators were immediately notified about the issue and signed off the plan to continue testing the vaccine in different doses, but AstraZeneca is facing criticism for not disclosing this in the release on Monday. Then they're under criticism for not offering a breakdown of COVID cases per group. The company said the analysis was based on 131 symptomatic COVID cases, but didn't tell us which group those cases were in, the 90% efficacy group or the larger 62% efficacy group. Then there's the fact that participants in the group that showed that 90% efficacy were younger. And this fact, again, didn't come from the company itself. The head of Operation Warp Speed in the U.S. flagged this issue on Tuesday, the fact that participants who received the half-strength initial dose had been 55 years or younger, obviously a lower risk category when it comes to COVID-19. And then finally, there's an issue around pooling results. Some industry experts have said that AstraZeneca pooled results from 2 differently designed clinical trials, which some people say is a break from standard practice and perhaps has rendered the results a bit patchy.
Juliana, many thanks for joining us. Those are some of the concerns that have been raised with regards to the disclosures or the lack of disclosures on the part of Oxford and AstraZeneca. But staying with that story, some of the other related headlines. Prime Minister Modi is scheduled to visit the Serum Institute in Pune on the 28th of November. Remember, Serum has an agreement with AstraZeneca to manufacture the Oxford University vaccine. That's Covishield. They hope to do that in Pune. The aviation regulator has extended the ban on international commercial flights till the 31st of December. However, certain flights may be allowed on select routes on a case-to-case basis. Delhi's Environment Minister and senior Aam Aadmi Party leader Gopal Rai tests positive for COVID-19. He's the 3rd minister in the Delhi government to have contracted the virus. 6 members of Pakistan's cricket squad have tested positive for COVID-19 in Christchurch ahead of their T20 and Test match series against New Zealand. The New Zealand Cricket Board says the members of the Pakistani squad may have breached biosecurity protocols on the first day of their 14-day mandatory isolation. Well, the big data that we are watching out for, second quarter GDP numbers will be released tomorrow. And ahead of that, a poll conducted by CNBC TV18 shows the economy is likely to have contracted by 8.9% during this period. Now, while that is a significant pullback from the 23.9% contraction in Q1, it will mean that India has entered a technical recession for the first time. Lata standing by with the key highlights from the poll. Lata, what do the numbers tell you?
Well, the GDP for July, August, September, or the second quarter is going to be announced, and a CNBC TV18 poll expects that the economy would have contracted by 8.9%. Okay, this is the year ago number, and this is quarter ago of quarter one, April, May, June, which of course was a terrible quarter, -24. Now, another way of looking at the GDP number is as GVA, gross value added. Not very different from GDP. You subtract taxes and add subsidies and you get the GVA. So by GVA standards, the economy would have contracted by 8.6% compared to 23% in the first quarter. Now, you know, originally we had got estimates of -10 and -12 for the second quarter. But after this data, GDP is a combination of EBITDA of all companies plus wages plus taxes. Now, when the second quarter numbers came, we found that the EBITDA of all the listed companies had risen by a way higher than expected 40%. Now, after seeing this higher EBITDA, a lot of people have, decreased the contraction expectation. JP Morgan is the data we are quoting. They also upgraded their GDP forecast from some -9 or -10 to -7. But all economists, after looking at the EBITDA of the listed companies, which was announced, they have been upgrading the GDP number. Now, this is the internals of the GDP. Whatever is yellow is our poll, okay? Now, as you can see, only agri and power are actually still in positive terrain. The rest, mining, manufacturing, are all in negative terrain. Though, of course, they are not as bad as Q1, which is shown by the green bar. Public administration is what government is spending. There again, government has not spent much in Q1 and Q2. But the positive I want to point out is that many people have now reduced their estimate of contraction. They don't expect the economy to fall much. For the full year, we got a number of -8%. Now, this is much better than the -10 and -14 that we were getting about 4-5 months back. Even the RBI number, you will notice, the last number we got from RBI is -9.5 for the full year. Most economists believe the RBI will also bring down the forecast and say the economy is not so badly off. It will contract, but it will contract probably by 7 or 8%. In any case, all those estimates will depend on what we get from the second quarter GDP. This perspective is only to show that, yes, COVID hit us badly, but we appear to have been slowing from a very long time. You know, 7.1 even in the first quarter of 2019. We never saw 7% after that. And then we have given up even the 5 handle even before COVID hit us. It's good to remember that. Hopefully the COVID number, if it doesn't come as bad as 8.9, then we will get further upgrades to the full year economy.
After witnessing a sharp contraction in GDP by 23.9% in the first quarter of the current financial year, and a multi-speed normalization of activity in the second quarter, the Indian economy has exhibited stronger than expected pickup in momentum of recovery.
Well, that is the RBI governor, and of course we will be tracking the GDP data very closely here, but that's tomorrow. But here's a quick check of the other headlines that we are tracking tonight. Rural India seems to be leading in infra and construction activity this year versus projections in urban areas, according to heavy construction machinery maker JCB India. MD and CEO Deepak Shetty tells CNBC TV18 that 75% of their machines are being used across rural India this year, as opposed to 55 to 60% in a normal year.
Big transformation is taking place in rural India. The Bharat is firing, and we are seeing, as I mentioned earlier, all these projects are creating the demand for the machines, particularly in the rural side. I'll just give you a data. When we look at our machines in the field, normally around 55 to 60% of our machines would be operating in the rural area. But recently, when we had a close look, almost 75% of our machines are operating in the rural areas.
So rural demand much stronger when it comes to infrastructure. That's the view from JCB. Arvind Fashion CEO designate Shailesh Chaturvedi tells CNBC TV18 they've seen a better than expected Diwali this time, with sales coming in at about 80% of last year. Chaturvedi says the focus now is on revitalizing their 6 core brands, which will see traction in a post-pandemic world.
We've gone steady consistently. There is an improvement in July, August, September, and we have now crossed 50% of the revenue. And if you look at recent Diwali festival, we've crossed more than 70% of the revenue. So there's a consistent revenue increase since the Unlock 4 that happened in September. Most of our stores are now running, and consistently the business is coming back to normal now. This Diwali has gone as per plan, and in fact slightly higher than the plan, and we saw good demand across the country for this Diwali, where when you look at Diwali to Diwali business, we close to 80% of the business.
Well, speaking about the demand environment, despite green shoots being seen in the last few months, the FMCG sector may witness a contraction of up to 3% in 2020. And that's the word in from research and analytics firm Nielsen. Remember, Nielsen had earlier forecast a decline of up to 1% for the sector this year. Mangalam joins us now with a summary of the report. Mangalam.
That's correct. So a lot of insightful data points that came in from the Nielsen's presentation that they made to the media. A handful of them right up for you. The first one, of course, is the fact that growth has recovered across all segments, and in that, home and personal care has seen the sharpest growth. Now, this is positive from a stock market standpoint for the larger FMCG players, the likes of Godrej Consumer as well as Hindustan Unilever, because this was the segment that did not do too well for them for the past couple of quarters. The second thing that really stood out was rural areas continue to drive growth. They've grown at 10.6%. And that's higher than the average rural growth that we've seen as against urban growth, which stands at around 1.3, 1.4 times. And, in that itself, North is a region which is growing much faster and West is still suffering, presumably because of the weakness that we're seeing in metros like Mumbai, etc. Now to the most insightful points. Packaged goods as well as hygiene products are selling more in rural India as against urban India. The growth rate in rural India is 8 to 11 times. So that's telling you that the long-term trend of increased packaged branded goods and hygiene products, which were erstwhile considered to be more urban in nature, are now penetrating much faster into the rural area. There could be two factors for that. One, increased awareness because of the pandemic, and secondly, the migration from urban areas into rural areas could be driving this consumption higher. So that's a positive over the near future. And they also saw near 3,000 new launches in the health and hygiene space itself. So put all these things together, the headline, while they say that they've trimmed their growth expectations for this entire year from +1 to -1% to about -1 to -3%, the trends that they spot about stronger rural growth, higher penetration of categories into the rural areas, and newer launches and increased share of e-commerce, these are medium to long-term positive for the FMCG space.
All right, Mangalam, many thanks. Now, the market action, Indian equities bouncing back after Wednesday's sell-off, the Nifty reclaiming 13,000 in intraday trade. The Sensex has ended near the day's highs after recovering more than 200 points coming off the intraday low. The Supreme Court has dismissed Skoda Volkswagen's plea challenging the FIR registered against them in the emissions scandal case. The FIR registered in July in Noida alleges that the automaker installed cheat devices in its diesel cars to manipulate emission norms. Here's a CNBC TV18 exclusive. The Adani Group is yet to get security clearance for taking over the operations at the Jaipur, Trivandrum and Guwahati airports. Remember, the cabinet led by Prime Minister Modi had approved the proposal of leasing out these three airports to the Adani Group. Anu joins us now with more details. Anu, what are you picking up?
Well, sources have told us that the Home Ministry is yet to provide security clearance to Adani Group for the three airports of Jaipur, Guwahati and Thiruvananthapuram. Do remember that Airport Authority of India provided the letter of award for these three airports to Adani Group during the months of September and October. Now, the current expectation is that they hope to sign the concession agreement with Adani Group for these three airports by December. Now, we do know that there have been some legal cases going on as far as Thiruvananthapuram Airport is concerned, but officials tell us that Adani Group has provided an undertaking saying that they will abide by the outcome of these legal cases. So the work is broadly ongoing as far as the concession agreement signing is concerned, which is expected by December, of course, and 6 months after December, that is the timeline that officials tell us, that 6 months after signing of the concession agreement, they expect Adani Group to take over these three airports. For now, back to you.
Okay, Anu, many thanks for joining us.